Good afternoon, Franklin Township. This is Bill Bowman from the Franklin Reporter and Advocate. Welcome to the April 8th edition of the Franklin Reporter and Advocate News Hour. As usual, I'm joined by
PJ Parker from the Franklin Reporter and Advocate as well. And we are very happy to be here today. We're going to be touching on a subject that is not a happy subject, but nonetheless an important subject. And today's News Hour is brought to you by Venus Jewelers, your destination jewelers for over 5 generations, located in the Rutgers Plaza Shopping Center, where turning your precious gemstone and metals into your precious memories is what they do so beautifully. Not to mention repairs, caring for your precious gemstones and your jewelry creations, and the ultimate in customer service. That's Venus Jewelers, the Rutgers Plaza Shopping Center, right off Easton Avenue, and that is venusjewelers.com, 732-247-4454. Peter Stavrianides, his family, and his family of Venus Jewelers.
Very well put. And we thank them for their continued support of the News Hour and of the Franklin Reporter in general. Okay. So today we're talking about something, a topic that was spurred by an event. I think it was last week. Was it last week? A week before? I think it was last week.
It was within the last 2 weeks.
Right. A person from Hillsborough died by suicide in Colonial Park on a Sunday morning. I don't know if it was coincidentally or not, but it was during a 10-mile run that was being held by a New Jersey track running club. So that spurred one of our guests, Mike. Actually, it was my phrasing of how it happened that spurred one of our guests to Kalisha Smith to contact me and say, you know, this is really how we in the community that deal with suicide and suicide prevention phrase these kinds of things, and this is why. And we're going to bring her on along with Dr. Lori Goldblatt, who is a clinical psychologist, and we're going to talk about how important it is. How we always say words count and words matter. So we're going to talk about how important it is to phrase things that surround suicide and suicide survivors. And by survivors, I mean friends and relatives of folks who die by suicide. Now, you notice I'm saying die by suicide. I'm not saying commit suicide, right? So that's
appears to be an important distinction, which Kalisha will be discussing with us.
We will be talking about that. So rather than
talk about them, let's bring them on.
Let's bring them on. I'm having problems with my fingers. Welcome. We have Kalisha Smith and Dr. Lori Goldblatt. Thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see you, Bill and PJ.
Okay. So, Kalisha, let's start with you because you're the one really who I want to say started this, but who prompted this news hour. When you read the story, what was it about the story that concerned you, and what did you do?
Sure. So I read this story and I want to just kind of start off by saying I appreciate being here. And I'm a lifelong Franklin Township resident. So I really value the work that you all do here with the Reporter and just love our town. So I read the article, and while it gave really great details that were newsworthy, being a part of suicide prevention, some of the things that concerned me was the way that we kind of talked about it, right? Mm-hmm. So I love, Bill, that you're already incorporating some of the things that I gently suggested around us saying died by suicide. And really, the reason why we kind of shifted the language in suicide prevention is because when we say things like committed, it has meaning to it, right? So when we think of committed, we think of committing offenses or committing something, right? Also, you might have heard language before about like completed. And quite often when we say completed, we think about like task completion. When we think about successful, unsuccessful, we have to stop and say, do we really want to, deem someone's life taken by suicide as successful versus them living being unsuccessful? So it's more so about language really does matter. And we want to be direct. We want to be clear. We want to have language that's free from meaning making. And we also want to include resources. So it's not a problem to talk about suicide, right? We want to talk about it. We want to educate people. We want people to ask questions. But whenever we talk about it, we want to make sure that we have resources available, whether it's like hotline numbers, crisis centers, because whomever might be reading our newspaper or listening even to this conversation, we don't know what state they're in emotionally and mentally. So that's kind of how I reached out to you all.
Great, and we appreciate that. Dr. Goldblatt, or can I call you Lori?
Yes.
And yes,
Thank you. Yes. Do you have anything you can add to that? I mean, I don't know if you saw the story or not that we're referring to.
I did, yes.
Okay.
And I completely agree with this rephrasing language as opposed to committing, and also successful suicide versus successful living, which is what we would hope for people. And at this point in time, I recently learned about a new suicide prevention hotline that will be launching in July for the whole country, 988. I'm not sure if it's launching in New Jersey prior to that, but I know nationally it will be available July 16th, I believe, 2022 for all. And this is new for us. It's great that it's there. But again, if someone doesn't know about it or doesn't know how to reach out, we're not going to be of help to them.
Mm-hmm. So it's just 988?
Yes.
wow.
Oh.
Okay.
Is that from cell phones and from, if people still have landline phones?
Yes, everything.
Okay. That's certainly simple enough to be able to commit to memory. Oh, there it goes with that word again. Sorry.
I've never heard. I've been a reporter since like 1983. I don't think I've ever read a story where they. First of all, I should say that in general, most newspapers, most news organizations won't write about suicide unless it happens in a public place,
right?
Or if it's a very well-known person. But in all those years, I don't think I've ever read where someone said successfully completed a suicide. I mean, that would just be. I don't think that would get past anybody, any editor. I mean, you know what I mean?
You definitely hope not.
Yeah, I mean, that's just God. That's just
offensive.
Aside being offensive, it's just morose. It's not even. It's not.
Exactly.
Yeah, I should say, but and I meant to say this earlier, folks. Those of you who are watching and listening, we had some technical problems in the past. So if you're having difficulty hearing PJ, please let us know in the comments, and we'll do what we can to fix it. Anyway, PJ. Go ahead.
God, where do I begin? I just heard a clip from Robin Williams fairly recently, and it was captioned, "We see it too late." He was talking about the fragile meaning of life, and all of the things. This had to have obviously preceded any of the thoughts that he had about taking his own life, and I think it was later discovered that there was an illness associated with it that may have prompted him to do this. But throughout his life, he bounced from sadness to hope to despair, back to joy, back to sadness to hope, despair. And he continually made it a point about self-discovery and realizing your value, and that if your value is valued, how rich are you? I think one of his quotes that I wrote down was, "I don't know how much value I have in this universe, but I do know I made a few people happier than they would have been without me." And what a lovely, joyful, self-recognized statement, self-actualized statement, that you would hardly associate that with someone who was in such a state of sadness and hopelessness to go to that ultimate step. I'm puzzled by it. It's touched me personally. I've had a very dear friend. He's gone now 6 years. A minister, a consultant to so many, very active in the community. Laura, you may know who I'm talking about.
Yes,
and
I
I'm
do.
not going to mention his name.
Yes.
But he was very active in charitable organizations, raised personally millions of dollars for others, ministered over births, funerals, weddings, a friend to all, a gifted singer, a gifted actor, just an incredible human being. And I saw him about a month before this happened. And the last thing I heard him say was, "Yeah, we're all going to get together. There's nobody like us, and I'll bring the dessert." We were talking about Thanksgiving. And in March, he was gone. And he had made the attempt once before. And several of us who knew that made him swear he would call us if he went there again, if he was so lonely in his life, that there was something so gravely, deeply missing. And the first time he got through it, and he did reach out for support, and the second time he did. So this subject touches me on a level that, of course, I feel guilty. I'm sure anyone who has known someone who has experienced that on some level takes on this false superpowerness that I could have made a difference. Or is that just dream thinking? When someone makes that decision, is there anything that anyone can say? Is there anything anyone can glean from behavior, from words, from interaction that could actually give us some inclination as to how we can be of help, how we can hear what's really being said, and how we can make a difference? Can we make a difference?
Who wants to go first?
Open to both.
Yeah.
Either of you, both of you.
So I want to start by saying thank you, PJ, for sharing such, like from your heart, such a personal reflection. And I'm really sorry for your loss. And, you know, I'm going to preface what I'm saying about prevention by saying this isn't what happened, is not your fault. You don't own the responsibility of it, right? And so before we start talking about how we can listen, how we can assist, how we can help, my hope and my prayer for you is that you are able to find some peace and comfort. And there are resources that we can talk about for folks who are survivors of suicide loss, right? But it's really important that you take care of yourself, even in this conversation that we're about to have, right?
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Yeah. So when we think about suicide, what we know is that a large percentage of people who die by suicide have ideation ahead of time, right? And ideation really is just a range of thoughts about all the way up to planning to their death, right? And when I say range, I mean range. And so most folks who have ideation or have thoughts do not die by suicide. So I do kind of want to put this out there. While it is a public health issue, while it is something very serious, and one life lost is way too many. We all agree on that, right? But the vast majority of people really do that have thoughts really have some ambivalence about it, right? Like they have some thoughts about, you know, kind of struggling with, is that what I'm thinking of? You know, they might have a crisis in their life. They might have a mental health concern that is, you know, untreated or misdiagnosed or something like that, right? But the vast majority of people who are contemplating suicide communicate it in one way or another ahead of time. And so typically what we see is that the warning signs, right, for suicide, and would it be okay if I kind of ran through some, and Dr. Lori, please jump in if you hear some as well.
Because I think this is absolutely not only helpful, but essential.
Okay, great.
There, especially having gone through a pandemic of isolation
Absolutely.
and life-changing activity from children through adulthood, a lot more people have been in a position to be hopeless. So
Absolutely.
yes, anything you can contribute toward the recognition of this. Thank you so much. Both
So
of you.
let's talk really quickly about warning signs, and then we can talk about protective factors and things we can do to strengthen people's resilience, right? And talk about that hope factor. So when we think about warning signs, and warning signs really are, I call them the flashing lights, the way pause, hello, everybody look up, right? And so they can be communicated verbally and non-verbally. So what you're really looking for is for warning signs, when someone's really starting to talk about the end of their life, a fixation on death. You might see some people giving away their treasured possessions even. And they might be kind of like, how would I say, like arranging their final business, right? Reviewing their legal documents, and that's good. But when you're thinking about the broad look at a person, if suddenly they're changing everything, they're giving away their possessions, they're making final arrangements or affairs, right? Getting their affairs in order is what it's called in some communities, right? Saying their goodbyes, making those last apologies. You might also see, when we think about our young people in particular, you might start seeing high risk behaviors start to emerge, right? Like things that young person may not have ever done before, may not have gotten into trouble. Racing their car, substance use, and even increases in substance use. For our young people as well, I also talk about monitoring their social media. Right? What are their social media accounts look like? What are they talking about? What are they posting about? Some folks may not overtly say, I want to die, but you might start to get a flavor, if you will, from some people's social media posts, contemplating life. Is it worth it? What would life be like if I didn't exist? Would anybody miss me? Those are some of the things you might hear folks say. Another one you start to hear about is folks feeling burdensome to others. That they feel like they are, what they need, what they want is a burden. And you start hearing that. You also might hear people, they might actually research the means, and all means is the method by which they might die, right? So they might start doing computer searches or looking things up. And so those are some of the flashing lights that come to mind. Also changes and behavior or changes in appearance, like drastic changes, maybe not taking care of hygiene as they did before. So I don't know if you want to chime in as well, Dr. Lori. Anything else comes to mind?
Yeah, one of the things I think about is also withdrawing from friends and people they were originally close with, saying goodbye to people, making sure they say goodbye to everyone around them. I think about a young person, for example, making a will, which they wouldn't necessarily need in other circumstances, but making sure everything is taken care of in their absence. Also, some of the behaviors you talked about before, high risk things like driving 120 miles an hour on 287, for example, using new and worse substance of abuse when they hadn't before, taking risks like that. Said before, pulling away from loved ones, a young person holding up in their room all the time, stopping eating regularly, basically abusing their own bodies in a sense, and also researching, for example, guns and things online. If we can track those things, that would be helpful in preventing such things. One of the things I think about too with suicide is my daughter was a part of Want TV at Franklin High School, and when she
mine too, Dr. Lori.
And she produced a video in her senior year called Suicide, a Permanent Solution to a Temporary Problem.
Wow.
And I'm not sure exactly where she got that phrase, but she said she might have been from a rock group. I'm not sure. But that's what I think about when I think about suicide.
Rock philosophy.
Yes, it's just, it is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Everything in life, for the most part, is temporary. In this moment, we will not relive this moment again. We move on, or most of us try to move on, and some people just can't, and they're fixated on life would be better without me here. Other people in my life would be better without me.
Yeah.
And so you're saying, like, I feel I'm a burden to others. And so those kind of be the warning signs.
I had two experiences in college, actually, with different, obviously different people. The first was a guy who 1 year in the dorm I was living in lived next door to me, and we were friendly, but not bosom buddies or anything. So one day he knew that I was starting to work out and whatnot, and one day he came up to me and he said, "Hey, Bill, could you use a heavy bag?" And I said, "Sure." Yeah. He goes, "Yeah." I said, "How much do you want for it?" He goes, "No, I'm just going to give it. I just want to get rid of it." I said, "All right, fine, cool, thanks." And he did one of these. He goes, "Yeah, like that." So I didn't know why he was so excited.
Wow, that was not really a hint at all. That sounded
but
like he was being generous.
It sounded like he was being generous, but quite honestly, I was 19 years old.
In retrospect,
it would have gone over my head anyway.
Wow.
And it turned out that a couple of weeks later, he was going through a thing with a former girlfriend, and a current girlfriend, and a couple of weeks later, it was a murder suicide. He killed the girl, then he killed himself.
Oh.
And I was like, and then obviously, then it clicked in. Of course, and other people told me that he was giving his stuff away. So, then it all clicked in. And the second one was a few years later. I was talking to the brother of a friend of mine who I don't even know how we didn't know each other. Maybe that's, unfamiliarity sometimes breeds closeness, I guess. And he was really opening up to me for some reason. And he told me that he was thinking of killing himself. And I was like, again,
why?
Had no idea how to deal with it.
Right.
And I was, what do you say? Oh, you don't want to do that. And he said the only reason that he hadn't done it to that point was because he didn't want to leave a mess for anybody to have to clean up. Well, he solved the problem by shooting himself in the woods. So there'd be no mess for anybody to clean up. So, yeah. So, I really think, I don't think my experience is all that. And of course, with the friend that PJ mentioned as well. But I don't think my experiences are all that odd. I think a lot of us, if not most of us, are touched by someone who dies by suicide. Am I not? I mean, do the statistics show that? Dr. Greenblatt?
I would think so.
Goldblatt. I'm sorry. Did I say green? I'm sorry. Gold.
Yes. Okay.
I'm colorblind.
I too had a friend when I was about 19 who didn't actively suicide, but she had developed meningitis before there was vaccine and things. And she declined all medical help for it. And she eventually died of it because she did not want to live anymore.
Yeah.
And that's something that is treatable. And obviously she didn't seek out treatment until it was too late. She had collapsed in the hallway of our dorm and was taken to the hospital, and she died like a day or two later.
Wow.
And it was kind of a shock. Obviously, I was 19 also when that happened. And I think many of us are affected by suicide, or friends that have suicidal thoughts, I would say, especially in adolescence, because we see everything as in the moment when we're that age. And we don't necessarily see solutions to our problems, whether it's a breakup or other kinds of losses, loss of a parent, loss of a friend. I myself lost a friend to COVID early on before there were vaccines. And some of us thought she had suicided, but she didn't. She unfortunately was the only one in her family that did not survive COVID. But such losses are common these days, unfortunately, because of COVID, because of other factors. This person who suicided in Colonial Park, I'm not sure how old the person was. Do y'all know?
I think he was 37. Excuse me. Yeah. Nope. We just lost your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. There are many factors. Sometimes it's sudden loss of something that other people may not discern, whether it's loss of a job, loss of even responsibilities within a job, one family member or another saying something against you and taking it very personally, feeling like your life is over because this such and such happened to you. And again, I think about this is a temporary circumstance. It's not a reason to harm yourself.
Right.
Like one of the most famous examples of an attempted suicide is George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
He thinks everything's going to end and he's a horrible person, and what good is his life? And he gets to see what purpose his life has had since he was a young child.
Mm.
And obviously we can't all have a Clarence the Angel or the Almost Angel, but being able to talk to somebody and just reach out, and those of us who are friends with somebody, we see these behaviors, to keep them connected and know that there's someone there to listen, someone to stay with.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay.
And a suicide attempt.
Right. Kalisha, can you give us your perspective on that?
Sure. So, kind of going back a little bit, what we know here in New Jersey, suicide is the third leading cause of death for folks aged 10 to 24, and it's the second leading cause for folks 25 to 34. Now, when you look across the U.S., it fluctuates a bit, but it's typically in the top 10 of leading causes of death. And we know that, suicide impacts all cultures, all races, both genders. But what we do know is a couple things is that women tend to attempt more. However, men die by suicide at much higher rates, and we believe it's because of the means or the method by which they choose, normally a firearm. So let's talk about means and methods, right? And so one of the things we want to do, and in order to have what we call safe messaging, meaning that when we talk about it, because we're not going to not talk about it, it is absolutely a myth that you should keep quiet about it. So we want to talk about it. We want to do it in a safe way. So one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we're not giving graphic details. Right. So we don't necessarily want to say what means that someone used. We don't necessarily want to say kind of like the aftermath of what happened, right? We can say that person suicided, as Dr. Lori said, or died by suicide. We want to give the hotline number. We can talk about location, right? Because we're giving a news story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or having general discussion. But we want to be mindful not to give specific details because that can be triggering to people. Right. And so the other thing about means that's important for us to know is that limiting access to lethal means is like the number one prevention, right? So when you are concerned about somebody or, you're noticing differences in someone, you want to reach out, because between limiting access to means and connection, those two things are incredibly important. So limiting means, what I'm actually speaking of is like if somebody's having a hard time and they have a firearm, maybe that firearm shouldn't be in their home during that difficult time. You want to make sure it's in a lockbox, right? You want to give people time between the thought and the action. You want to have time. You want to have space. The more space that we can put in there, the better. If you use medication and you have someone in your home that might be struggling with thoughts, you want to lock up your medication. A lockbox from Amazon typically is around $39.99. So worth it, right? You want to make sure that, I would say like baby proof, right? So the way that when you have a small child and you kind of think about what would, they have a hard time with, what would hurt them in the home, you want to think the same way for, your loved one that might be struggling. Because what we know is many people, not all, but many, once they have a thought in their mind about what they would use or how they would take their lives, most of them stick to that thought. So if you can limit the way that they can have access to what they've thought about using, you give them more time and space. So those are kind of my things I want to jump on and make sure we say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we think about prevention, we also want to think about what are the things that build people up, right? Because we've been talking about hopelessness. Like Dr. Lori said, that feeling of hopelessness can be so burdensome, so overwhelming. And it's like, okay, how do we deal with that so that the ambivalence doesn't lead us to a space where we can't move back from the kind of the path we've set ourselves on? So we want to have people who are connected. COVID has really impacted folks' connection, right? Reach out to people. Reach out to your loved ones. Check on them. Not just, hey, how are you? But I love you. I was thinking about you. Quite often I tell parents and caregivers, tell your child why you love them and how important they are to you that's not connected to achievement. So not I love you
Yeah.
because you got A's.
Unconditional. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, PJ,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Right.
help them understand that their living, their existence as who they are is
Mm-hmm.
valuable to this earth, right? Because what we really want to do is help people feel that sense of hope for tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And purpose for their
Right.
lives.
One
Hope
of the
for
things
tomorrow
that,
and
well,
purpose.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
No,
I
that's
wanted to
okay.
amplify on the thought a few minutes ago about one of the impeti, and one of the reasons that this might be contemplated that they, meaning family, friends, loved ones, colleagues, would be better off without me. I think that's one of the components. I think as you were just starting to touch on, who will miss me? Do I matter? Do I make a difference? And if that's a question, the reinforcement by friends and even people who are not so close to you, just the reinforcement that hey, you're doing a great job. You do make a difference. You do matter. Makes a difference. And I think there's yet another component that even when somebody may have gotten past the thought of the universe will be better off without me, or I don't really make a difference. It comes down to I'm in too much pain, and nothing anybody says or does can lift me out of that pain.
Right.
How does a therapist get to that? Get to the subsurface, which I think is really that I am in too much pain. Here may be the reasons, but ultimately it's that pain that doesn't go away that I think is the final straw.
So I'm going to jump in, PJ. I think, I definitely hear and value what you're saying, right? And I think that all of it really amounts to pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're talking about, someone who's in distress. Now, the distress can come from many different avenues. And so really it's about connecting that person, like us on individual level, but connection also is to support systems, right? So a
Mm-hmm.
part of people's support system could be someone like Dr. Lori or someone like myself as a clinical social worker, so that they can get to the root of where is the hopelessness and the pain coming from, right? And what can we do so you feel supported and recognize your worth and your intrinsic value that was inside of you since you were born,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, the team of people, right? We each have a role when it comes to connection. So family and friends have a role. If we're talking about young people, the school has a role. If we're talking about, anyone else, right? Connections to your community organizations, connections to your faith leaders, connections to treatment is valuable and important. And I think the more we speak about it openly, helping people to understand that there is no shame. I say to my clients all the time, no shame, no shade, right? In seeking treatment and getting support. But it's our job as a community of people, wherever we find ourselves, to destigmatize, to have these open dialogues, to use a great platform like you guys have at the Franklin Reporter, and help have honest, open, direct, and safe conversations so people can feel important and connected, right? And it's important for them to see, that treatment can be all kinds of things, right? A treatment professional can look like Dr. Lori, or a treatment professional can look like myself. So no matter what they're seeking and whom they might feel comfortable with, there's somebody there for them, right? And I think that that's a part of my mission. I believe it's part of Dr. Lori's mission, right? We're supposed to know that they matter, that they have their life can have meaning,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing that they feel at this moment doesn't have to be the story of their whole life. It could be a really difficult chapter, but there might be more to the story if they can move through it. So my mission, right, is to come on programs like this, to go to faith-based institutions, to go to different kinds of children's center. I'll be at the Boys and Girls Club in another county tomorrow. That's the mission. The mission is to get the message out that this does not have to be the end for you, that there's more to life for you. And the pain you experience now is real, it's valid, it matters, but it's not your whole story.
I think that's an amazing point, that as deep as this pain may be, as valued less as one may feel at that moment, that there is that shining possibility that you just haven't discovered it yet. And I think if someone gets that feeling that, yes, there's absolutely hope, this is not the end of the line, and here's why. If you get somebody to accept a possibility.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Dr. Lori, look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, early on, when you think somebody might be in danger of harming themselves, the first thing is certainly taking away the possibility of lethality. As Kalisha was saying, locking up a gun. I personally.
Nope.
Okay, did we lock up?
I think she's locked up. All right. Well, let's when she comes back.
Yeah, she can. I'll jump in right there. So we want to lock up guns. We want to. One of the most dangerous things actually is some over the counter medicine. So if you're a family that goes, oh, is she back?
Are you back, Dr. Lori?
I think
No,
so.
we lost you there for a minute.
Okay, Dr. Lori.
Okay, you spaced out on us for a while there. Go ahead.
So I think the first thing is to minimize the lethality, so that the person knows that there are some other means of coping with their stress, whether it's going to therapy, seeking out, as Kalisha said it, in your faith-based community. Prayer is a great tool of recovery. And certainly having family and friends reach out to that person, seeing that they do have some purpose in others' lives, and that knowing that this may be a low point in their lives, but it's not the end point.
So,
and knowing that there are resources out there, without being.
If somebody were to, if somebody were to walk in, I'm sorry, if somebody were to walk into your office and say, Dr. Goldblatt, I'm just going to kill myself. I'm nothing's working out. I lost my job. I'm about to lose my house. I just want to end it. What's your first reaction?
The first thing I would do with that person is to talk about what resources they have, what things they have to live for, such as family members. If I really and to seek and to find out what means they intended to use to harm themselves. If someone had a distinct plan, I would probably try to convince them to check themselves into the hospital to get stabilized. Because if somebody really had a plan, that means they really could do it, and obviously I wouldn't want that to happen. If they're coming into my office, they are seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, that they can ask for help. If somebody is definitely bent on harming themselves and they don't come into my office, that's more scary to me than somebody coming into the but generally speaking, I would want to get them help, get them potentially committed to a hospital, at least a 72-hour hold, and make sure that they can get help right on the spot.
Is there sort of an ethical thing for you as a psychologist that you have to notify authorities?
Oh, Mary, you're reading my mind.
Yes.
That's exactly where I'm going.
Yeah, you do? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
How about you, Kalisha?
Is there a fear of that someone who is teetering on that edge would have a fear of exposure and a lack of privacy to deal with this very, very deep private issue? And then all of a sudden it becomes a social issue. Then it becomes a matter of a record somewhere. I would think that would have a deterring factor in somebody actually seeking help. And is there a way to avoid that?
Well, it might be a deterrent, but from where I sit and hopefully where that person will progress to at some point, is that them being alive, right, and then continuing their life with whomever their loved ones are, is kind of worth the momentary community wraparound that we hope happens, right?
But that's not temporary. That becomes that's there. That's out there.
Not so, yeah, but I'm not sure what you mean by out there. So
If
tell me more what
if
you
it's a
mean.
police record or some sort of authoritarian record, that's out there. You aren't closing that door.
This is true. I have no argument with you there, but
But how do you get around that? If somebody
how do I get
comes to
around?
you and says, "Please, this has got to be between us," do you, as a professional, both of you, as licensed mental health professionals, uh, are you legally obligated to
So I'm
report
straight.
these?
So I'm screening for risk and I'm assessing, right? And so I want to be really clear about kind of the purpose of, or at least my role on this platform, right? I want to not kind of go into the absolute nitty gritty of what it might be like, all the scenarios, what it might be like one-to-one with a particular person in front of me. However, right, if someone comes to, my virtual office, or I've worked in the past in the community with youth, and I've worked on the inpatient psych unit. So I've kind of done all of those places, been in all of those stages, rather. If someone is coming to me and they have ideation, they have a thought, but they haven't quite worked out the plan, or they're not that far, because we said it's a range, that I'm not reaching out to authorities about, right? That we're working together to see what protective factors they have. We're working together to do what's called the safety plan, who they can reach out to, knowing what their triggers are, knowing where they can get support, knowing who to call and where to go. Right now, progressively, as their crisis is more imminent danger, right, I might have to reach out to authorities. But those are all things that we talk about from the very beginning, starting in treatment. This is no secret. Right. This is not like I spring it on you the moment it happens, right? We're talking about this from the first day, whether or not suicide is why you decide to come to therapy. Those are some things that we just kind of talk about. Now, as I learn the person and they learn me in the therapeutic process, my hope is we learn to have that trust and rapport with each other, that they know my decision-making around pulling in community members that might be authoritative, right, is really because I am that concerned that they won't live, and that the need for them to live, the hope for them to live right now supersedes what they're thinking of right now, and potentially what a police report might say later, right? I would hope to mitigate some of that. Maybe we could get them to go to the hospital on their own without involving police. There are other things. Maybe we can call a family member that can meet them at the crisis center. So it doesn't have to be out in the, Franklin Reporter that this is what happened to that person. But my hope is to keep them out of the Franklin Reporter in a more lasting way of having taken their lives.
Right. So Dr. Lori said that she had, as a psychologist, she has an ethical obligation to contact. As a clinical social worker, do you have that same ethical obligation?
If I have screened and assessed and someone is in imminent danger of taking their lives, then yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And within, as Kalisha said, within the first 5 minutes of an intake with somebody who comes to my office for therapy, I let them know that everything we talk about is 100% confidential, with the following exceptions. One, if they are in imminent danger of harming themselves or someone else, or harming a child. And that's the law, that's the ethical code of any mental health professional. And I too have worked in inpatient settings, and right now I work mostly in the private practice, but I also work in a treatment center for people with severe and persistent mental illnesses. And I, for example, did an intake with a young man earlier this week who was basically hysterical, having a little hissy fit because he didn't want to stay in the facility. And we eventually convinced him to stay, and his medications were changed. He's much better today.
Wow.
And I explained to him, if you choose to leave, that is your choice. It's a voluntary facility, but we will go after you. We will make sure you're safe. We may even follow you in a car if you attempt, this particular young man attempted to hitchhike right outside the facility.
Mm.
And somebody stopped for him, and he chose not to go with the person. He came back to our treatment center, and today he was just fine.
Wow.
So things can change in a very short period of time. He was just, this place isn't going to work for me. I'm leaving. I'm done. And he eventually chose to stay. And as I said, in like 4 days, he's doing much better.
That's good. That's great. Here's something I've wondered. You know, you watch TV and you see the ads for different pharmaceuticals, you know, and they've got, by law now, they've got to list, not all, I guess, because there are more, but most of, or I guess the most recurring side effects of whatever drug that they're pushing at the time. And every now and then you'll hear, you know, recurring thoughts of suicide. You know, that, so what that tells me is obviously the drug, and some people who have during the testing phase, they've reported that they've been thinking about killing themselves.
Right.
So that
With an antidepressant.
not just in any, well, sometimes antidepressant, but you know, other you know, rheumatoid arthritis drug. I think there's one that you can have these thoughts. So, you know, when we think of people suiciding, we think of someone who's down on their luck, who lost whatever, and they've given up, and it's a nature kind of it's a nature. I can't phrase this properly. It's an external influence kind of a thing that's causing them to think about ending their life. But when I see these pharmaceutical ads, and you know, of course, the drugs have different chemicals in them, and they're messing with your brain and everything else, that tends to make me think that there's something chemically going on as well in folks who are thinking of suicide. Am I off track there? I mean, is this something that I don't want to say people could be hardwired for, but is this something that could be in us and just sort of dormant?
I think for some people who, for example, take antidepressant medication, one of the things does happen is that they get the energy to think about in a fuller way, killing themselves. Depression is not just sadness, but it's also lack of energy. It's lack of desire to move on. Many people who are very depressed will just lay in bed all day and do absolutely nothing. And then they may have trouble sleeping on top of that. They may have no appetite. Yeah. Those are just, you know, some symptoms of depression. And sometimes what the antidepressant does is get them out of bed and give them the push to harm themselves. And that's why you hear some of these things, you know, this particular antidepressant is not good for children under 18, or this antidepressant will cause this harm or this symptom. But that's basically what it often is that it gives them the energy to choose the suicide.
Wow.
Interesting.
Versus just laying in bed doing nothing.
Right.
And there are subsequent companion drugs to assist the antidepressants that may be already in place. And then you have another level and layer of side effects. Does that actually help people, or does that contribute to a further depression? You see, you have to take another pill on top of another pill on top of another pill, and you're not getting better.
Yeah, I think sometimes the lag between initiating the medication and having a positive effect can be the point where somebody can potentially try suicide. Like this young man I was talking about before, took a medication right before my therapy group this morning, and he said, it didn't affect me yet. I said, well, you just took it a moment ago.
Wow.
It's not like you inject something in you and it's an instant effect.
Right.
So again, like if they are medicated, they need to be watched in that initial period. I'd say even the first 2 weeks to see what kind of effects they have, whether it's alleviating the depression, giving them energy to attempt suicide, or whatever else.
Wow. What a double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
It empowers you to continue a negative thought.
Well, we want to be clear about, you know, I'm not a psychiatrist, right? But we want to be clear about this idea around medication. You know, medication should be taken under the guidance and instruction of professionals, a medical professional, right? And so medication is not like a fixer of your of everything for you, right? Because there are mental health disorders that change our chemical balance, right? So medication can help, but it's not like a happy drug, right? It's not like you take this and immediately life changes and your circumstance changes or your internal composition changes immediately, and now you don't have any of the former thoughts that you had. That's not what it is, right? So that's why really the most successful treatment for depression really is around medication and talk therapy, right? And around community support. So when we're talking about medication, it's one piece of the puzzle to help someone move forward in their progression to feeling more hopeful and wanting to live, right? It's not the end all be all. So I think part of the challenge is we look at it as, okay, this person took this medication, now things should be better, right? But maybe their situation hasn't changed. Maybe their socioeconomic status hasn't changed. Maybe they're still enduring oppression. Maybe they are still misplaced. Maybe they've just lived through a natural disaster. Maybe they have other risk factors that people aren't aware of, right? Medication is just a part of a treatment plan for somebody. And so kind of when you view it as like a pizza slice, then we understand why we have to make sure all those other elements are in place so that someone can be successful.
Kalisha, what do you think of my question earlier, though, about the idea that some folks may be, I use hardwired in quotes, but the predisposed, better word, predisposed to suicide?
Genetically, chemically?
I think it's a tough question, right? I think there's a lot of factors that go into suicide. It's not a simple thing. There's usually not causes. There are normally risk factors, and sometimes, like an immediate crisis that precipitates a suicide, but it's not usually like one thing, right? So when we think about risk factors, there's individual ones that people have around their internal chemical balance, like mental health concerns, substance use. Trauma is a huge one that we haven't even touched. There's things like family risk factors and then societal risk factors. So do I think that a person is hardwired for suicide, Kalisha? Not necessarily, right? I think we're hardwired to live, actually. And most folks experience ambivalence even in that suicidal ideation, right? But do I think that some people have risk factors that increase the likelihood that they may die by suicide? Yes.
Interesting. What can you tell me? Now we hear of certain groups every now and then where the spotlight is on them in terms of suicide. Military veterans, LGBTQ, especially teens. What can you tell me about suicide rates, especially in those two groups?
So I don't have exact numbers in front of me. And one of the things I try not to do is go into great detail of exact numbers on a broadcast like this, because one thing we don't want to do is normalize for people the idea that so many folks are dying by suicide, right? But you're absolutely right that those are categories where people or populations of people that have increased risk. So LGBTQ community, our veterans. Actually, in New Jersey, the rates for our Black youth is on the rise. So much so that Bonnie Watson Coleman back in end of 2018, beginning of 2019, put together a task force called Ring, and they came out with a report called Ring the Alarm, because what we found out is Black youth in this country, ages 5 to 13, are 2 times more likely to die by suicide than their white counterparts. And so that rate, we've been seeing the rate in New Jersey rise for like the last 6 or 7 years. And we also know that, overall in the country, the folks that pass away by suicide are middle-aged white men, right? So, and actually under them are indigenous folks, Alaska Natives. And then the third group is actually Black men. So when we think about it kind of like holistically, what that tells me is that like nobody's left out. Right. There are populations that have increased risks, right? There are populations whose rates are high right now. And we're very concerned about them, right? That's why I am very vocal. That's why I reach out to our paper. That's why I have been, reaching out to talk to Black youth in our community. But really everybody, there's really kind of like not a population, not a group of folks that is not going to be touched in some way or another. Right. So we want to make sure that we are working for a more equitable, society. We want to make sure, because when we think about protective factors, it's not just, locking up the medication, or treatment or medication. Those are very important. But it's also things like food security, safe and fair housing, making sure that people have employment, dignity, human dignity, worth, value. Those are all things that contribute to someone feeling hope for tomorrow and purpose for the future. And so when we think about those communities of folks that we've highlighted, we could all probably point to the risk factors for them in the areas where they may not feel valued, right? The areas where they may not feel honored or may not have their needs met. And so it's really up to us to, while we're out here advocating and doing our suicide prevention talks, to also be making sure that we are just as strongly advocating for, housing, advocating to make sure that these food banks stay open. All those kinds of things are really important. And I've been seeing you all cover those things.
Yes, we do.
So that is such a beautiful part of you are doing your work in suicide prevention.
Well, that's a wonderful way of looking at it. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Dr. Lori, anything to add to that? Your thoughts on that?
I think also the many of the things that Kalisha said, especially I think about job security, safe housing, food insecurity has been a risk factor through the pandemic, especially. And we have a wonderful food bank here in Franklin, which had a grand reopening, I think, a couple weeks ago.
Yes, with a new director who's going to be astounding.
And just to notify people that these resources are available to them. Some people just don't know what's out there. Many people didn't know how big and fabulous our food bank is, for example. And that there have been, for example, rental assistance programs during the pandemic so that people wouldn't get evicted from their homes. And some people just don't know about the existence of such programs. I remember reading that New York State had, several $100 million that they had yet to give away for rental assistance, for example, through the pandemic.
Wow.
Why are they waiting?
Yeah, exactly.
People are getting tossed out on the street and they're just sitting on their thumbs.
Right. But many of these resources are out there, and for us and for you as reporters, letting people know that these things are out there, and you guys have done a great job of doing that in Franklin. But I think, within the state, within the country, people are not always aware of these things, and they're kind of just left out to be hopeless about the future when there is and are resources that they can take advantage of.
Right.
That's one of the things that when we started this, and this is not to plug us, but the idea of connecting Franklin with Franklin, bringing Franklin to Franklin, has been the bedrock of what we've been trying to do, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, or ugly, or whatever. And one of the things that I would like to do a quick shout out to is the new youth center that's opening on May 14th on Lewis Street, where I do believe there is a mental health component that is either in place or being considered, and if it is not, that would be an amazing resource for the kids in the community. I believe it's ages 12 to 18. There's no charge for them to be a part of this, where they feel a sense of purpose, feel a sense of somebody cares about me and nurturing what my gifts and talents are. And I know who's involved in this, and I can't imagine that there is no mental health componentry here. But in case they're thinking about other directions, I would love for both of you to reach out to them. In case there's just something that you could all collaborate on, because the more folks who are realizing that there are too many out there who feel purposeless and who feel like their lives may be dead-ended for whatever reasons, that there are resources, and certainly both of you are so rich. We're so thankful that you have the time to do this today.
Yeah, absolutely. PJ, have anything else?
Just want to make Oh, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just want to make sure that folks know that the resources are out there, right? Dr. Lori said at the beginning of the broadcast, 988 is going to be the national number that anybody can get to, starting in July for the whole country. But there are hotline numbers up and available right now. So the great thing about New Jersey is we have our own hotline, and it's called the NJ Hope Line. And it's 855-654-6735. There's also the national hotline. And just so our young folks know, these are lines that you can call. They also have text components because, some of our young people are not going to be, making those traditional phone calls. I wanted to leave the Veterans Crisis line is 800-273-8255. And then if you are a parent of a young person who's struggling emotionally or behaviorally, New Jersey has 1 point system access for getting resources called Perform Care, and that is 877-652-7624. So we want to leave people with resources.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of resources, how would people reach both of you?
Yes, that was my next question. I wanted you guys to tell a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how folks can reach out to you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kalisha.
Okay, so Kalisha Smith, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have a private practice called Wise Counsel Services. It's all telehealth, very affordable rates. And so I see folks individually for therapy. I also come and do mental health presentations in the community. And I'm a local minister. So thank you for having me.
Well, there you have it.
Wow.
And do you have a phone number, email address, website?
Thank you. So you can reach me through my website at www.wisecounselservicesllc.com, and you can contact me there.
Great. Okay. And Dr. Lori?
My office is on Easton Avenue. I see individuals for psychotherapy there. I also do groups at this facility where I work part-time. And I see ages from late teens all the way through the elderly. And my phone number is 732-213-5533. And you can email me at drloribgoblet@gmail.com.
Lori, we're going to ask you to say that again because you got cut off.
Yeah.
Please tell people again what your phone number is and your email address.
Oh, the number is 732-213-5533. Lots of repetition there, so it should be easy to remember. And my email is drloribgoblet@gmail.com.
Okay,
Great.
that's great.
All right.
One of
Well,
the things, this is not a closed subject. This is just a tip of a very big iceberg. And one of the things I wanted to touch on, and we will have subsequent news hours dealing with some of the other ways that people can feel less hopeless. And one of the best ways is to help someone else. Volunteer in a senior citizens community. Volunteer at an animal shelter or the food bank or any of the myriad organizations in Franklin Township where others can be helped by your ability to help and your ability to listen and to care and to show that this person means something and that you're willing to listen. The feedback, the interfeedback is so valuable. And your gift is that you've given. And the smile on that person's face, you can see people relax. You can see people uplifted by a word or a phrase that is so uplifting to someone who is going through their own issues. Give someone else something, even if it's that something that you would wish somebody would give to you. The act of the giving will absolutely give back to you, and that definitely gives you some hope.
Yep. Well said.
Well, we're just, this is, again, the tip of the iceberg. We definitely want to connect on this subject again, certainly with some of the ministers, the ministers and the clergy in town. We have so much diversity in Franklin. There are so many different opportunities for people to discuss this and have resources to contact that This is such an important and yet taboo subject. People don't want to talk about it.
Well,
They don't want to talk about
there's
it,
still that
but we
stigma.
need to give it voice.
I don't know this I don't know if this is true, but still true. But I know for a long time in the Catholic Church, if you died by suicide, you couldn't be buried in a Catholic cemetery because that was a mortal
So,
sin.
right. So there's a stigma attached to the discussion of it.
Yeah.
And I think that religious caveat aside, perhaps we have to look beyond that sometimes. And for the sake of our own humanity and the humanity of those we care about or suspect are going through something
Mm.
that could be ugly and awful,
Right.
that
Right.
we have to discern the time and place to change our moray.
Right. All right. Well, I want to thank, and we want to thank Dr. Lori Goldblatt and Kalisha Smith for joining us this afternoon for this really interesting and I think necessary conversation. And again, my personal thanks to Kalisha for reaching out to me to set me straight
No, it's
on
great.
the
That's
language
great.
surrounding suicide. Yeah.
And I really want to appreciate, Bill, the way in which you so graciously responded and really opened the dialogue, right? That was my hope, just to open dialogue. And I really appreciate the way that you were so open to the conversation. And that's, how we're able to help save lives, right?
Right.
That's how
That's,
we're able to work together. So
that's
I
the
really
bottom line.
appreciate you in this platform.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for
Yep.
saying that. All right, we're going to say goodbye to our guests, and
Yes.
I'm sure we'll have you guys on again at some point in the future to talk about something mental health
Well,
related.
here's the topic I'd like to explore further: women and depression,
Sure.
women
Definitely.
and the tendency for the suicide. So much more to explore, and
Yeah.
we would be very grateful and honored to have both of you back on that level.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Thanks again. All right. Okay.
Heavy topic.
Very heavy topic.
Yeah.
And that's not you. That's me. Okay. There we go. Whew, okay. Well, that was a heavy topic. All right. And that was
Yeah,
interesting.
and that is kudos to you for being open to that sort of correction, because there are a lot of people who would have bristled at their choice of language being challenged, and that you opened yourself up to someone else's not only opinion but professional methodology.
Well,
That was great, and it spurred this
Oh, yeah.
this news hour. So that's really cool.
Um,
Thank you.
Well, thank you for saying that. But the AP, so see, journalists go by the AP style book, the Associated Press style book, and I don't recall how long. And not everybody sticks to everything because some of the stuff is just silly. But I don't know how long ago that the AP decided that they were going to stop saying committed suicide and say died by suicide. Frankly, I never saw. I just didn't catch the nuance. I didn't really see the difference.
Right.
I didn't appreciate it.
Right.
But so that's when I wrote the story. I said committed suicide,
Mm-hmm.
and then Kalisha wrote me that email and sort of laid things out a little bit. And then the light went on. I thought, okay, fine for that. First of all, for that thing, and then secondly, wow, what a great topic this would be.
Yes, absolutely.
Because
So
it touches
thank you.
everybody's
Thanks
life.
for
I
doing
mean, I don't think it touches a majority of people. I think in some ways suicide touches everybody because either you have a
totally agree
loved
with
one
you.
or you have a friend,
Right. Or you go through a bad time yourself. I mean, there are lots of life changes that everybody goes through.
Yeah.
You lose somebody you love. You lose an animal that you love. I mean,
Right.
there are just so many instances, and that we all somehow, no, not all of us, over 200 people in Franklin did not get through this pandemic.
Right.
But for the rest who did, we're not unscathed by this. We're not untouched by the isolation, by the change in parents having to adjust their job situations, their careers in order to educate their children at home, the
Right.
learning curve in how to educate their children at home, the changes on so many levels that we all got through somehow. We're still here.
Yeah.
We're still here. And we've learned so much, and we have yet so much more to learn, but But
Right.
the outreach of this information is it's just critical right now more than ever, because now there are more choices. Now that we're more open into society, now we have more of an obligation to resume our lives and be better and move forward. And there's
Right.
some people who are not knowing how, because of the isolation, because of the vast change that everyone went through.
Yeah.
So this is an ongoing subject, Franklin.
Yes.
Different
I-
facets of it that need to be explored. And if you have any thoughts as to which direction this might want to take, please let us know. Please email Bill, editor at franklinreporter.com, or me, ads at franklinreporter.com. And we welcome your ideas as to how to bring topics that are important
Absolutely.
to all of us.
Absolutely. I just want to give a quick shout out to Joy Smith, who during the course of our conversation we made some comments on the Facebook page, and I just wanted to thank you for paying attention and offering your input and your response. It was good. Thank you.
Do you want to mention any of them?
She was just well, she says things like, thank you for sharing some potential. Oh, I'm sorry, Jay Smith.
Jay
Oh my
Smith.
goodness. I am so
Gentlemen.
sorry. I am so sorry. Mike, I got to get new glasses. Jay Smith. Jay Smith. Thank you so much. God.
He's going to forgive you if you get his comment right.
Anyway, yes, Jay Smith. I'm sorry. Good Lord. Thank you for sharing some potential warning signs. And, we talked about safe messaging, how to respond to people who have said that they want to kill themselves. My question about the drugs and how and why some of these drugs have side effects that may lead to people suiciding. I don't know if I'm ever going to get used to say the word, to use suicide as a verb. Okay, that I don't know what that was. And then he put in the New Jersey Hope Line and also Kalisha's website. So thank you, Jay Smith. I don't know, boy, oh boy, oh boy. See, this is what happens when you get glasses online. You don't go to you go to the eye doctor to get the prescription, but then you go online to have everything else, and then you're the guy who fills out all the forms and all the other stuff, and then you get these glasses for $10, and this is what happens: you can't see.
Yeah. Okay.
So Franklin, I want to ask you this now. When I was in my late teens, well, we're going to ask them. I want to know. When I was in my late teens, probably till my late 20s, 30s, I wore a choker because I liked the way it looked. I don't like wearing necklaces. There was a time.
It may come in handy one day.
There was a time when I wore, because I'm Italian. There was a time that I wore the horn, the good luck horn. I don't have that now, but I wore the choker because I just like to wear it. And like I said, it was probably to my early 30s. And over the past couple of years, I've been thinking, I think I like the way that thing looked. And I know I still have it. I just can't find it. It's probably in storage in Hillsborough somewhere. But the other day I decided, what, I haven't bought myself a gift in a long time. And doggone it, I deserve a gift. So I bought myself
puka shells.
I bought myself a little puka shell choker. So Franklin, I'm going to bring it up close. What do you think?
Are those real puka?
Those are serious. This is heavy.
These are serious pukas.
This is not plastic. These are the genuine puka shell, and I like it. I just like it.
Yeah, you risk being called Bill Puka Shell Bowman.
Bill Puka Shell. They're going to call me. I'm not a surfer. I mean, this was the surfer culture in the 70s, but 1970s for those of you who weren't around then. Yeah. Anyway.
Well.
So I kind of like it. This is going to be my new whatever.
Token of what?
Me.
Well, if it brings you joy.
Like I said earlier, I can't afford a Maserati, so I spent $10 on this.
Well, there you go. If it makes you happy,
I'm
then
having a midlife crisis at 61.
ah,
What does that tell
okay.
you?
Well, on that happy note, we want to thank you all for tuning in to the Franklin Reporter and Advocate News Hour for the April 8th edition.
Yes.
We are your local journalism source for what's going on in Franklin. And if we don't know what's going on in Franklin, uh, we need you to let us know if there's something going on in Franklin. It's just the two of us. We have to rely on Franklin Township to give us the rest of the story. If you've got an event coming up, whether it's at your school or your place of worship, or one of your kids has done something so stellar that you want the whole community to be proud, let us know. Send us your information. Tune us into activities that we just, for whatever reason, are either not seeing or having not been able to schedule in between 10 other events because we really didn't know about it until the last second.
Right.
So we kind of have to depend on you, Franklin, to give us what's going on so we can bring it to you and tell the rest of the story. So
Exactly.
again, Bill Bowman is editor at franklinreporter.com, and I'm PJ Parker, ads at franklinreporter.com. And we'll both check to make sure that the other is aware because sometimes that happens too. It's
That
like, oh,
happens.
you didn't realize you were supposed to be somewhere at 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
No, I never saw that. Anyway, so
That happens.
we need your help.
Yes.
Uh,
Speaking of
Staff
help, we want to thank Venus Jewelers.
Yes,
Do we
of
not?
course we do. Venus Jewelers is one of the staple organizations in our community, has been for well over 40 years, well over 5 generations, uh, from grandfather down to great grandson, who is holding up the helm. Uh, Family of Peter Stavrinidis, who they're just not only a fixture in the community because of their jewelry store, but they give back. Peter is active in so many different organizations, not the least of which is the Chamber of Commerce and the New Jersey State Theater, and so many organizations. But they mark their reputations on their customer service, the quality of the product that they avail you to, uh, design services, repair services, and just stellar customer service that you just won't get from an average department store facility. This is a family organization. They treat you like family, from creation to design to consultation or just a cup of coffee. And just how are you? They care. They care
Yeah.
about their customers as family. And they are located in the Rutgers Plaza Shopping Center on Easton Avenue. Their phone number is 732-247-4554. What is their phone number? I just had that. Uh, oh, help me, Bill. I can't find it.
I,
I think it's
I,
247-4554. And if I'm wrong, Peter will kill me. But it's venusjewelers.com, and in the Easton Avenue location of Rutgers Plaza. They're a destination jewelry store, and it's they have been through a lot these last couple of years. So your support is always valuable, always welcome, always appreciated at Venus Jewelers.
yes. 247-4454. So you had it.
Okay, I did have it right.
You got
Yay!
it. So again, the website is www.franklinreporter.com, 24/7 news. Like you can't get it anywhere else from any other news site that purports to cover our township of 8 villages. As PJ has said a couple of times, if you want to contact me, you can get me at editor@franklinreporter.com. If you would like to, and we encourage you to do so, if you would like to how can I phrase this speech?
You can say that if you would like to be in the know and have your business be read about in the same context with the news of Franklin Township, with the news of your community. People want to know what's going on in their community. And by extension, they want to know about businesses within their community. People like to shop locally. They like to patronize people who are in their backyards, who they know, who they see on the streets, whose kids go to school with their kids. People want to know about your business because if you're here in Franklin, You're looking to succeed in Franklin. You're looking for people to value and be valued by your business. So a perfect vehicle for you is the Franklin Reporter and Advocate family of products. Not only do we have the 24/7 news site, which is franklinreporter.com, but we have the morning report, which is a daily email blast. You can sign up for that at no charge. And the details are on the front page of the website, as well as our monthly digest, our newspaper. And very interestingly, there have been a few people who have specifically requested appearance for their advertising in the newspaper. And I think there's a really interesting little phenomenon going on, folks. We are zoomed out. People are tired of doing this. They want to turn a page. So there's the monthly digest, our recap of the prior month's top news stories, as well as the live streams that you see us doing throughout the community. You have the ability to sponsor any of those, as well as the Franklin Reporter and Advocate news hours, such as what you just watched today. So any one of you who are interested in advertising, if you have stayed with us to the end of this broadcast and you wish to provide some advertising to and from, I'm going to give you a special discount. But you have to mention that you saw this on the Franklin Reporter and Advocate News Hour on April 8th. And
Okay.
I'll know that you were paying attention.
That's a deal.
Isn't
That's
that
a deal. That's
Okay.
a deal. Such a deal. So if you need to get us on the Twitter, we're at Franklin Editor. Obviously, if you're watching this on Facebook, you know that we're on Facebook. And we have an Insta, Franklin_reporter_and_advocate. We're also, I don't have a link to it yet, but we're also on TikTok
Right.
with the rest of the world. Hey, listen, you laugh. PBS NewsHour just went on TikTok.
I'm sure everyone is on TikTok.
You know, MSNBC, Ari Melber is on TikTok.
I'm sure the whole universe is on TikTok.
It's not just
Minus
for
one.
It's not. Hey, it's not just for
Yeah, I'll
Not
let
just
you
for
do the thinking
dancing
and the
anymore.
talking for the Franklin Reporter.
not just for dancing anymore. It's serious.
Yeah, okay.
There's some serious news things going on. I've gotten a lot of my news about what's happening in Ukraine from TikTok. Believe it or not,
I'm sure that you have.
and I've seen Russian protests in Moscow,
Mhm.
and it's becoming quite the little news portal. And again, I say this all the time. 52% of people 18 to 29, I think, get their news from TikTok. So it's a thing. We just have to
It's a
figure,
thing.
we just have to figure out how to use it to engage people. And
Well, Bill, I think you've solved that problem.
how have I
You
done?
are puka shells.
I have a puka shell choker now. So yes, I'm never going to hear the end of this. Hey, I don't care. I like it. I've liked this. I've wanted one of these again for a number of years, and I went out and I got it.
So
that's a
watch
lesson.
Bill Bowman.
That's a
puka
lesson to you,
on
Franklin.
TikTok.
That's a lesson to you, Franklin. If you want something, you got to go out and get it. And the heck with what everybody else says. Be yourself. As I had a poster on my wall in my college, all my college dorm walls. It said, "Be who you is, because if you is who you ain't who you is."
And on that very, very
I'm being
happy,
who I is.
weird note. This is PJ Parker from the Franklin Reporter and Advocate saying,
What?
thank you, Bill Bowman, for co-hosting once again the Franklin Reporter and Advocate News Hour. We have more things planned down the pike. If you have an idea, topic you'd like us to explore, please give us a shout out and let us know what's going on. So for right now, Bill, you signing off?
Yeah, we're going to sign off, Franklin, as usual. Stay safe and Slava Ukrainia.
At 2. We'll be back.